Tell me a little bit about.
The liquor store up here?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been in it, honey. I don't drink.
You know what?
I don't drink. I've never been in it.
It's not a liquor store.
It's not a liquor store anymore?
No, they sell. It hasn't been a liquor store for 6 months.
Well, that's how much. Well, it used to be, though.
I bet.
It
That's
really?
what she told me.
It really was,
Now,
yeah.
they sell flowers for funerals.
But you didn't have any what now?
They sell flowers for funerals.
That's a good follow-up to liquor stores, isn't it? Everybody dies of cirrhosis of the liver.
Well,
or
that's what I
accidents
tell
and
everybody.
stuff.
It saves you so much time coming through there.
Yeah.
You didn't make up mess
No,
up nowhere.
We did fine.
Well, that's right. That's right. It saves you so
We
much.
had
My
some
kids,
hesitations,
my kids come in from Atlanta and New York. I got them going, coming to places, come way down to Hogansville,
Yeah.
come way out here.
Okay.
Well, what we're interested in is you're telling us something about what it was like to work in the cotton mills
Okay.
in the early 30s.
I don't know that. I was working a cotton mill. Yeah. You want to know what it was like to work in a cotton mill?
You never worked in a cotton mill?
Oh yeah, man. I spent all my life in one, from 13 years up.
Were you born in Hogansville?
Beg pardon?
Were you born in Hogansville?
No, I was born in Greenville, South Carolina.
Well, why don't you tell us how you got to Hogansville?
It's a long story, honey. You want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Well, my granddaddy Barton, my dad's dad, he was you want to cut that off?
Yeah.
Just push that big button way down on the, way, that other one, way down there under
On the
there.
bottom.
On the bottom.
Underneath it. Yep.
Right there, right there. We got a hand thing on. My granddad was a cotton mill man. He was born up here around Athens, Georgia, right out in a little town right out of Athens, Georgia. Right almost on Oconee River up in there. That's where Oconee River heads up in there. And he went to school half a day. That was his education. Now I'm going to maybe get a little too much in here. And he was like me. I jumped out of the window of school one time. He jumped out of the window and never did go back. But my grandmother had a good education. She had a high school education. And she taught my granddaddy in math and stuff that he needed to know. And he was one of the finest mill men. When they say a good mill man, it means somebody knows what they're doing, get everything through and get along with people and stuff like that. Well, my dad, my granddad, people wanted him at other places. They'd offer him more money. All right, we moved from Greenville, South Carolina to Anniston, Alabama. There's another little bit behind that, but I won't tell you that. But anyway, my granddad was running what they call an overseer's job in the mill. And back in those days, this was in 1913 that we went over there. That's a long time ago. And in those days, you could hire your children and give them the best jobs if they could run it, you know. You know, back in those days, the people who owned cotton mills became the richest people in this country. They were called textile tycoons. You know why? Later on down the road, I'll tell you all about it. They worked people on the starvation wages. My dad, when he was a boy, worked in Porterdale, Georgia, for bib manufacturing company. And he worked in a little mill right down on the river, the Rumble Water Power there on the Yellow River, if you've ever been to this area. And he worked for 20 cents a day. Now, lots of people did that, children. They didn't have any child labor laws. And if you're big enough to push a soap box, you know what an old soap box that Octon soap used to come in? If you're big enough to pick up one of them, push it around in there where you could get up on it and get what you needed to go in the machine, you got a job. And so he worked there. All right. Then we got to Anniston. My granddaddy left Anniston, Alabama, You want to know all of this? All right, he went from Anniston, Alabama, to Fulton Bag Cotton Mills in Atlanta, Georgia, or what they call Cabbagetown. My sister lives on Johnson Street up here next to McKibben. She was born there.
Working with the Elsis family.
Beg pardon?
The Elsis had owned the mill there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I went to school there in the first grade on Boulevard Street School, right across from what's that park there?
Piedmont Park.
No, it ain't.
No, not Park.
Grant Park.
Grant Park.
I went to school right there and finished the first grade. Well, my granddad went over with them from there to Exposition Cotton Mill, across town, right off of Marietta Street. And my dad followed him over there. And so we were living there when Atlanta burned in 1917. Did you ever hear about that? Atlanta, Chicago burned, and Atlanta burned too in 1917, when there were 400 city blocks. And I was living there, but I went to the second grade there, and then my granddaddy decided he'd leave there and go to Edenton, Georgia. And I put this in parentheses. This is where, right out from there, where my wife has on Sinclair Lake, she has a nice little home there, and right in the, step off of the front porch into the water. And that's right out of Edenton, about, well, it's 110 miles from our door to her. And so, but anyway, he went to work in Edenton, Georgia. And I had my 8th and 9th birthdays in Edenton, Georgia, because I had finished school in the second grade. And I didn't go to school in the third grade there. I didn't go to school at all. We had a bad time. This was during World War I. World War I, and food was rationed. We lived in a barn of a house that you could throw a dog through most any place. But anyway, my dad worked over there, and I had, as I say, I had my 8th and 9th birthdays in Edenton, Georgia. And my granddad moved from there to Thomaston, Georgia. Well, we up and go to Thomaston, Georgia. And I started to school in Thomaston, Georgia. And believe it or not, I made the 3rd and 4th grade 1 year. I was bragging on myself, but I was a smart boy. All my life I was smart. My wife's sick of me. But anyway, we stayed in Thomaston, Georgia. I reckon about 3 years or 4. We moved there in 19 and 18. I had a brother born in Edenton on July the 11th, 1918. On January the 11th. And in the summertime, we left after I had my birthday, June the 7th. We moved to Thomaston again. All right. Well, my granddaddy left Thomaston and went back to Carolina. Well, I had gone to school long enough then that I was in the 7th grade. And my daddy he had more children there, and he needed help, and I begged him to let me go to work to help him out. And I quit school and went to work in February, and I had to lie about my age. February, I was 13 years old, 1923. And I told him I was 14. And I went to work in the old East Thomaston Cotton Mill. And I made $9.60 a week. And well, if my mother worked and my dad worked, my dad had a good job in there, and he made around $22 a week. He was a second hand. Well, we left Thomaston and went back to Carolina, following my granddaddy. Went to Anniston, South Carolina. And back in those days, you didn't have transfer trucks to haul you. You'd get a fellow with a mule and a wagon, haul your furniture to the depot, and you had to box it up, put burlap around it, and then they'd load it in boxcars. Well, our furniture was put in a boxcar there in Thomaston, Georgia, and I'll get back to that several times later. We went from Anniston to Greenville, and we stayed in Greenville a while, and my granddad went to Porterdale, and we stayed in Porterdale a while, and our furniture followed us around. They'd unload it in the depots. I would go down there at that depot, and I'd feel a mama's old beat-up furniture, tore all the pieces for moving it. And anyway, and before he got a house and moved that in, my granddaddy went back to Thomaston. And that's when we saw our furniture again. It started off in Thomaston, went to Anniston, South Carolina, to Greenville, South Carolina, to Porterdale, Georgia, back to Thomaston. And we started keeping house, and this was when the flu was killing so many people. In 1918, 19, 20, 21, 22, it had like to got me in 22. Now, I got a little ahead of myself over about 23 while ago going to work. But anyway, we stayed in Thomaston till the doctor said my mother was real sick and she needed to go. I don't know for what reason. We moved back to Greenville, South Carolina. And this is where I was born, honey, in 1909. But we moved back. My granddaddy went to Mississippi, and Mama told my daddy, said, I'm not going anywhere else.
Why did your grandfather move so often?
He got better jobs, made more money. My granddaddy, let me tell you, when we living on Marietta Street in Atlanta, Georgia, when Leo Frank was lynched, they brought his body right by our house. We lived with our grandmother and granddaddy because we hadn't got our furniture to get in the house. We lived with them, and my granddaddy and the old man Candler, to help get the Coca-Cola. They were real close buddies. If my granddaddy would listen to him, he had always had lots of money. He bought 2 new Upmobile cars and put them on taxi. And old man Candler trying to get him to put that money in Coca-Cola stock. I'm not lying to you, I'm telling you the truth. And he talked about it a lot after that. Well, one day my granddaddy disappeared, and he'd been gone ever since. I run into him. After I got married, my wife and I went to Griffin, Georgia to see her sister, and my mother had some kinfolks in Griffin. That's where she come from. That's where my mother and daddy got married, in Griffin, Georgia. And she asked me, said, when you go across this certain schoolyard down there, said, I want you to go down there and see some people that, she gave me the names, that were kin to her. Well, going across that schoolyard, we were going this way, and it was from down that old Brogan Mill down there, it was a path come this way, right close to the depot in town there, see. And I told my wife, we'd been married about 3 months. We married at Christmas, this was in March. I told her, I said, you want to come to my granddaddy show of the world. Now this was in March of 27, and I hadn't seen him since 23 when he left. She said, how you know? I said, I know it's him. He was a good looking guy, and he still had more hair on his head than my daddy had. Curly hair and womanizer and what else. He was a good-looking guy, and he held good jobs, and he made good money, and he knew how to save it, invest it. But anyway, I couldn't speak to him to save my life. I always regretted it. He kept looking at me. I told my wife, I said, if the man cut him from here to here over at Anniston, Alabama, it was about a woman. And my granddaddy wore those old high collars, you put a button back in, button up. He wore the high ones he could to hide that scar. And I said, if he got that scar there, I know it's him. And yet he couldn't hide it. And it was there. But he looked at me and I looked at him. And we walked about 15 feet. I walked on out about 15 feet, and he walked about the same distance. When I turned around and looked, he stopped and he was looking at me. I always regret it because it didn't take, that's not important what you want to know, but I'm telling you that. Now that's why we moved around so much. And when we moved back to Greenville the last time, I went to work with, I had an uncle who was a building contractor, built houses. He married my dad's only sister, and he gave me a job. And that job was $9 a week too. And I worked with plumbing people. Now this, in 1923, 1923, when it was, and I did this, and I wasn't but 9, let's say I was 10 years old, 19, 20, 21, 2, 23. I was about 13, 14-year-old boy. I was 14 years old because I went to the mill, went to work in Thompson Mill at 13. And my dad come back home from wherever he'd been, and he had a little money in his pocket, I reckon. He worked somewhere and got it, and we all moved down to Newnan, Georgia. He had an uncle, his mother's brother was superintendent of the mill at Newnan, Georgia. But we didn't move up there where he was superintendent. We moved down to East Newnan, if you know where East Newnan is. Old man Monroe Wood was superintendent of that mill.
That was what year?
That's where we lived. That's where I come to know Etta May and them.
When did you move to East Newnan?
When did I go there? We went there in February of 1924. And I worked in East Newnan Mill, and old man Monroe Wood was, I ought not say it, but he was the meanest man that God ever let live with people that worked there. If you had a party, you couldn't have parties. Now, my daddy had, Uncle Will Reynolds was superintendent of the old mill up there in town, and he had a brother, Uncle Henry, lived down there in East Newnan. And Uncle Henry, Monroe had, what do you call them, people that come and tell you what's happening all over the mill village there, see. And Uncle Henry was one of them. I didn't know it. Well, the boys got it in for me when they found out that I had to fight my way through it. And you know, he liked to run me off.
Did you call them spies? Or?
Spies, yeah, that's what they were.
We call them snitches.
Snitches.
Yeah. And I didn't know. I went down by Uncle Henry's one night, and his youngest daughter, Lucille, I didn't care too much about her, but I liked the other oldest and the best. And well, he had several daughters, and their mother said, "Where are you going, sonny boy?" I said, "I'm going to a party." She said, "Oh, you're not going to no party, are you?" I said, "I've been invited to one right up the street up yonder." She said, "Well, I don't believe I'd go if I were you." I said, "Well, I want to have some fun." I didn't understand. I didn't know what she talking about. We got run out of town. We got run out of town because I went to that party. And he made us move 4 times. We lived in East Newnan less than a year. And he made us move 4 different times on account of me going to parties. From one house to another. One side of the East Newnan to another side. And that man was that type of man. And my daddy had a pretty good job there, and he was a good middleman. My daddy was a good middleman. And I picked up a lot of this savvy from him that I didn't get to go to school anymore, but when I moved to Hogansville, we moved to Sargent, Georgia, from East Newnan. Papa got enough of it. Well, there was some people over there that I had known in Thomaston, and in Thomaston I played in the band. I played a trumpet in the band over at Thomaston, Georgia. And I could play that thing too. I wasn't behind many people playing trumpet here. I'm talking about amateur people around here. I wasn't what do you call him, James, Harry James, or something like that, but I could play a trumpet. So after we got over there to Sargent, the band director from here in Hogansville was named Howard Holbrook. And we knew some people, that sergeant that we had been, when you in Thomaston, they played in the band when I played in the band. So they got Howard Holbrook over there to see if they could organize the band. And Arnold Mills, it was Arnold Mills, the Sergeant Mill was, and the Arnco Mill. And those are the cheapest people too you ever worked for. They working for dirt. Now I didn't ever draw a penny of my money there. They put my money in the ticket with my daddy's money. Arnold Mills did.
And Arnold Mills was in Hogansville.
The what?
Where was Arnold?
Arnold Mills in Sergeant.
Sergeant. Okay. Okay. Sorry.
The Arnolds in Union, I know you heard, one of them made a governor of Georgia one time. But anyway, I didn't ever see my money. My money come in my daddy's ticket. And another thing, we traded at the company store, and they take out of what you owed them out of your money before you got it. See, that's communism. But anyway, when they got the band director over there, and they got some instruments over there, and it just happened that the little house that's going to have a band hall there was next door to where I live. So I went out there, and a fellow named Walt Knight, he was overseer of the spinning room over there, and he said, "Harry, you going to try to be in the band?" I said, "I don't know. I don't think I'm going to stay here that long." He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to get the hell out of this place." I said, I was a kid, but I said, I used that word. I remember it. He said, "Well, I was hoping you'd stay here. You're a good trumpet player." So anyway, the band director come around and says, "What kind of instrument do you want?" I said, "Well, if I play in the band, I'd want a trumpet." He said, "What do you know about trumpet?" I said, "I used to play a trumpet." He said, "Where?" I told him. He said, "He got a brand new trumpet out." He said, "Take this and run up and down the scales for me. You got to work up a lip to play a trumpet. You can stick a reed instrument in your mouth and blow it all day without, but you've got to work on a lip. It'd take you about 4 or 5 weeks where you could really play a trumpet." I said, "Listen, man, you think I'm dumb?" I said, "I haven't played a trumpet in 2 years or more. I don't have a lip." He said, "Well, see what you can do about it." So I could play the regular scale. He said, "Play some of the chromatic scale." And I played about 10 notes and I was through. He says, "I want to see you before I leave here."
What was his name?
Howard Holbrook. He was the band director here in Hogansville, Georgia. And he sold instruments for the Con instrument people out of the dealership in Atlanta. And he established lots of bands around this area.
He
So,
handled the instruments then?
beg your pardon?
He sold instruments.
He sold instruments as well as being a band director.
Now, did he have any connection with the mill?
He had no connection other than he lived in a mill house down here in Hogansville.
But did the mill?
And he was on they paid him, yeah. This was New England Southern Mills now.
Okay. Now, in Hogansville, they paid him to run the band, right?
He was on salary. He was on salary. The superintendent of the mill was Mr. H.H. Ogletree.
This is H.
We don't know what mill this is.
Oh, yes, it's in Hogansville.
What he's talking-
This is Hogansville.
Which mill though?
Oh, yes.
The superintendent of the mill was,
The Stark mill?
I'm talking about the big mill that's down there now. They tore down the old mill across the railroad. The only mill you see in Hogansville now. The big mill. Mr. H.H. Ogletree was superintendent of the mill. And he played a saxophone. And his wife played a saxophone. His daughter played a saxophone. His son played a trumpet. 4 in the family played. And of course, he was behind the band 100%. I had a good band down there. And so they asked, I'm all right, I think.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
Howard Holbrook says, "I don't want you in Sargent, Georgia. I want you in Hogansville, Georgia." I was the first, when I left Thomaston, I was the first chair trumpet player. The first chair trumpet player, the first chair man is always the best one. I don't care what section it is, whether it's the reed section or the wind section or what. I'm doing a little bragging, but I can play a trumpet, man.
Was it common?
And huh?
Was it common for these for mills to have bands?
Was it common for mills to have bands?
Oh yeah, they had them at every cotton mill had bands. This was the only entertainment. You didn't have radios. Few people had radios. You know, a man told me one day, he says, "Hey, let's go down yonder. They got a loudspeaker on that radio down yonder. We're talking about radios and well, anyway, we'll get away from that. That's not important. You went back yonder, we had something like that. I didn't think I'd ever see anything like that. But anyway, I come to Hogansville, and my sister, my oldest sister, had married, and they had moved to Hogansville. They had moved down to Opelika. This was a tire cord mill. They made tire cord that they built the foundation of the tire, the automobile tire. And they had worked for a tire cord mill in Opelika, Alabama, and they got a better job up here.
You know what?
And they got a better job up here, and they moved up here, and I said, well, and they wanted me to come, and I stayed with them. Well, I didn't get the job they promised me down here, though. They said it'd be 2 or 3 weeks before that job come open. In the meantime, they sent me over to the old mill over there. And I made a job that I was working on. I was making $16 a week, 16 and a half. My daddy was making about 24 as a supervisor. I was up here at Grantville. He'd done left, when I was come down here, he left Sergeant and moved to Grantville. And after he found out what I was getting down, he said, "You're not going to work down there no more." So I went to Grantville, and old man Ogletree called me. They called me to come out to the office. He says, "No," he told me who he was. He says, "Don't call my name," because he didn't want them people up there to know he's trying to. He said, "I want you to come down here, and I want you to bring your daddy." So I said, "For what?" He said, "Well, you do that, and I'll pay you money back for your trains in. I'll run all the time up and down that road." So we come down here, and they hired us. They hired us. And my dad got, well, let me tell you this.
What year was this?
This was in 1925.
And this is in Hogansville now.
Yeah. Well, I'd come down here late in 24, but he come in 25. The overseer of the mill, the card room where we were going to work, my dad told me, he gave us a house. He says, "I'm glad to have you down here." He says, "I need you." And he said, "Well, I'm glad to get down." He said, "This boy here is in the band. He plays the trumpet." He said, "Well, I don't want no horn blowers." And so we didn't go to work. We didn't go to work. We went by. We had never quit in Grantville. We went back up there. Well, anyway, Mr. Ogletree called. That's when he called then. Wanted me to come down here, bring my dad, and come to his office. Well, we went to his office, and he wanted to know what happened, and my dad told him. He said, the boss, Mr. Singletary, the overseer of the card room, he said he didn't want no horn tooters in his working for him in there. And said, "We just went back to Grantville." He said that. He said, "Yeah." So he said, "Get ready to come back down here. You still want to come, Mr. Barton?" He said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "It all depends on how much the money's going to be now." He says, "I'm making $24 a week up yonder, and he can make 16 and a half. He says, "Well, I'll assure you that he can make over $20 a week on doing the same thing, and you'll make $35 a week. If you come, I'll get you the same job you got." So next thing we knew, old man Singletary, he loved horn tooters. We moved down here and give us a good house, and that's how come I'm in Hogansville. Now you asked me the question. No. And I went to work down there in 1925, and I worked down there 44 years to the day. It's Stark Mill. I come down with a fungus. Where I got it, I don't know. I come down with staph infection in LaGrange Hospital, but the doctors wouldn't have no part of it. I always had kidney stones, and my doctor was going three of my doctors was going to Tulane University. It's a conference or something they have. They have a big medical school down there. I called another doctor. He said, well, you come on down here. Let me look and check you. He said, you got bad gallbladder. But anyway, he said, we can't operate on you. I knew he wasn't going to operate on me. I said, anyway. Anyway, he told me on Saturday night, my kids came in from California. I have a son that excuse me a minute.
Wait, 1 second.
You ever hear about old man Bob Stevens? He was Secretary of the Army during the war. I went to New York lots of times. I was up there, and my son was general sales manager for J.P. Stevens. And he'd tell Mr. Stevens that my great-granddaddy, talking about my granddaddy, he farmed, made it, and my granddaddy started in the cotton mill, and my daddy scheduled it. I was scheduled in the department down here, and then he says, and I sell it. So I went up to old man Bob Stevens' office, and he met me, and I tell you, he was quite a, they had 96 plants. He said, I've been wanting to meet you, Mr. Barton. He was just like old shoe. I just loved him to death. He said, right back there and throw your feet up on my desk. We're going to talk a while. Now, that's all enough about that. But Bob has recently just signed up to take he's a corporate vice president of Owen Manufacturing Company in Sewanee, Tennessee. It's right out of Asheville. And he's going to be in charge of all his sales, and he's going to be in charge of the people who owned it till he get them straightened out. They've been in a mess up there. And he'll get them straightened out if they stay there, and if they do own it. You're going to need another tape before we get through?
No, we're fine. I have plenty of tapes. Don't worry about it.
Okay, now where was I at?
Well, you told us that you spent 44 years in Hogansville.
Yeah, I was going to tell you, they said the doctor told me on Saturday night, says, in the morning I'm going to let you go home. He says, we're going to have to wait a while. And I'd had so much kidney problems and everything else. I have a heart problem all my life. And but anyway, when I got up on Sunday morning to take a bath, right here on this leg here, I'll show you. You won't believe it. See that scar? There was a bump that big right there. You see these scars here? Yeah. There was one that big there and one right there. This happened on Saturday night. The doctor knew I didn't have this thing. But they wouldn't have no part. I had a staph infection down there. They'd like to kill me. This like to have killed me. They called it blastomycosis, and that's another bad fungus. Well, I go down there and stay in the hospital 2 or 3 days and come back. Nobody run your job while you're going in the office. You come back, your desk got high. And I had some stuff we run asbestos down here. I've got a lung that's coated with it. They found that out when they opened my heart up. I had 4 bypasses here. I got the report of it right over there. But I was scheduling asbestos, and I was scheduling all of the heavy fabrics that were used and sold. And
This is after he worked
anyway, I worked in the development department, helped develop this asbestos thing, and so I looked on my desk, and in the testing procedures that had to test out right before you could ship it, and this asbestos, you had to, it was so rotten, the stuff was, you had to have a carrier to carry it through. We even use chicken feathers sometimes, carry it from one roller to another. And I forgot what we had in there, but you had to, the girl would have to burn out the foreign stuff from the asbestos, how much asbestos contents was left in there. And this had to go, this report had to go to the people, and we kept it in our records. All testing procedures. We use what they call ASTM, American Standard Testing Methods. And this is the highest, for textile, this is the highest testing method that you could have. Well, I went out there to see about that, and it was sleeting and raining. And on the 29th day of January, 1969, 28th day of January, 1969, and I had made a reservation for my wife to go to Los Angeles with having a new baby out there. Bob, that's where Bob lived. He was working for Stevens out there. He was West Coast sales manager and over all that operation out there. Well, I was going to take her to the airport at 3:30, and about 1:30 I went out to the lab to see if, I said, this stuff's got to be shipped. And I could hardly get along. I was on a crutch. And bad odor was bad. I shouldn't have been down there. But them people is, they just worried them to death down at the hospital. They needed me. They even wanted to get a wheelchair and put me in it up there. It made it sound like that I was indispensable. There's nobody indispensable on a job. I don't think there are. But anyway, you had to go up a cement ramp to go into the lab, testing laboratory. We had the development laboratory and we had the testing laboratory. And when I went and talked to her, she says, it's going to be all right, and we'll get it shipped this evening. And I said, well, good. I've got to go to the airport and take my wife. Got to get somebody to drive for me. But I started down the ramp. It was a rail there, and it was sleeting. And I said, well, I better get hold of this rail. And I didn't make 2 steps, and it sounded like a gunshot down here. I had a compound fracture of that right ankle. Well, I rolled down in there at the bottom down there in the cement place there where these old forklift trucks turned around. It just dug a hole out. And I landed in this pool of ice water down. Well, the girls saw me and they come running out there and they went in and got the jackets and sweaters and raincoats, covered me over and ran out to the office and told them, well, they got the nurse, we had a nurse out there, and she said, better call the doctor. And I had to lay there and all this stuff till the doctor come, and he says he's got a leg tore up, I think it's his ankle. And I said, well, I don't want to touch him. So they had the ambulance come in and carry him to Grange. I stayed in the hospital 166 days. I like to die, man, many times. You could see they put a cast, they had to put a cast over this thing. They couldn't do any surgery on it because they didn't want this junk to get in it. They put a cast on that up to here. I believe I put it on above my knee and put me a big heel on it a long time before I could get back on crutches. I went to California 2 or 3 times. But anyway, when they told me that I could go back to work, I didn't know that I was on city council in Hogansville, and I hadn't been running that job. Then we didn't have city managers. The 5 councilmen and the mayor ran the city. It ought to be that way now. They know more about what's going on, how to take care of the money. That's not important to this, but I believe in taking care of other people's money, taxpayers' money. Well, anyway, where was I at there?
Well, let's go back to when you came to Hogansville. You came in to play in the band,
Yeah.
and you got a job, and what did you do in the mill? Say,
I run fly frames.
and 28, 29, 30, 31.
28, 29, 30, 31, 32. And I had an uncle that worked in there, and he was a section man, they called it. Kept the machinery running. He was a fixer, just like a mechanic. And I could, if I had a few minutes, I'd work with him. And I stayed down there after time to go home and work with the other men if the job wasn't. So one day the old man secretary, bless his heart, he says, Harry, I got a section coming open on the first shift. I'd like to give it to you. I said, well, I'll take it. Well, that just thrilled me to death to have a job like that, and I left to work on machinery. And so I started. We had school. When I told you I didn't get an education, I went to school more after I was a married man, studying math. I even went to LaGrange down to take courses in English under a lady that was the First Baptist preacher's wife. She taught English in college. I went down. I'm not good on English yet, but I couldn't ever handle that stuff. But I did pretty fair with it. And I took me an ICS course in cotton carding and spinning, and made A on everything but one lesson. I made a B on one. I left something off I shouldn't. And this perked me up with the company a little bit. Well,
Where were those courses given?
beg your pardon?
Where were the courses given? Were these correspondence courses?
This was correspondence course, and I paid for mine. Later, they would pay for anybody's 15 or 20 years after that. Anybody wanted to take a course, they'd pay for it. I paid for mine, and let me tell you, this was during Depression years. I had a baby born to crash. That oldest daughter of mine said, Johnny, she worked at LaGrange College. She went to college at Lexington, what school, Kentucky?
Yeah.
She went to Vanderbilt, and she lived in LaGrange College. She was, I forgot what her title was, but anyway, she was, you'll have to keep me straight now.
Yeah, sure. So you took these correspondence courses.
Yeah.
And that was in about 31, 32.
Yeah, she was born in 29, and the banks closed the next week. How old are you?
I'm 74.
Well, do you remember when the banks?
Banks closed.
Banks failed
The
and
banks closed. Well, the banks were closing all around.
all closing all around, but they had a crash of them.
When they finally had, you're not talking about when Roosevelt closed the banks, are you?
No,
That was 33.
no, huh?
That was, Roosevelt closed the banks in 33.
Huh?
In the spring of
No, this
33.
was in 29 when Hoover was president.
Yeah, okay.
You need to change it,
No, you need to change it.
huh?
Your tape went.
I got some more tapes.
Okay. Your tape stopped.
That was mine, not.
Yeah.
Courses, and how much were you making while you were taking those courses?
I was making
Doing
this,
fly frames.
huh?
When you're doing fly frames.
Well, our wages just fell out. The bottom fell out of. We went from $20 a week down to $9, $10,
Now,
$11.
this is very interesting to us.
Huh?
This is very important to what you're saying. So
Yeah.
you went from 20.
About I'd say an average about $11, $11 and a half a week.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had to take pay cuts. This was when the Depression started.
Yeah. When the Depression started, you went from 1150 to what?
Well, when it started,
What would they cut you from 1150?
they cut me from about, I was making, I think I was making around $20, $21 a week.
Okay.
They cut me about half in two.
Okay. Now.
I wasn't on salary.
Yeah. Okay. Now.
I was on wages.
Yeah. Now, do you remember what happened when the New Deal came in? NRA.
NRA, yeah, the Congress ruled that was illegal, you know.
Well, Well, that
National Recovery Act.
the Supreme Court did in.
Well, the Supreme Court threw it out.
But,
Yeah, I know when it come in, NRA, National Recovery Act.
that's right. Now, what did that do for you?
That didn't do very little for the textile people.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, the only thing I can tell you was we were slow. Well, I tell you what happened. Labor unions jumped in here. We didn't have labor union down here. They jumped in. We're going to organize all the textile mills now. All of this stuff comes from up north. The textile industry used to be up north, up around in Massachusetts, Lowell, Massachusetts, and all them places up in there. I saw a lot of those mills up there. And because they could work people so doggone cheap down here, they lost their jobs up here and they moved the industry down here. You remember that?
Yeah.
All right. And then they would cut us every opportunity got. But when the Depression come along, we really got cut. And then then it was the labor union coming in and organized everything. The mill said, well, we'll just close down the mill. The people, the officials of the mill, the company said, we'll close down. We're not going to let the labor union tell us what to do. And I was with the company on that thing. I despised them. I didn't have better use for labor unions. I don't have any now. I don't care who they are.
This is very important for us because we've talked about some people who are for the union and with some people against the union, and this is a very important.
I'm 100% against it because it's never done any good for anybody that I've ever known in any industry. Now, you may disagree with me there. You may disagree with me. It may be something that, but it ruined this little town. I was telling my wife a story about I like to got run off down there on account of I would refuse to let my wife do a certain thing, and I was on quality control. I headed up quality control, and she needed to be at home. She worked in the mill, worked daytime from 8 o'clock till 4 in the afternoon, but they was short and had buses. And they was putting some people out there from the big mill out there. And one of the women that was in the union, they cut green sticks about this long. They went around to these mills and closed them down. But you know what? Down in the valley, they had machine guns sitting out on the road waiting for the people from Hogansville. They never would go down there. Now, I went down through there. I know I got some experience out of it. Get a brother-in-law out of jail. But anyway, the labor union didn't do a thing but set Hogansville back a long, long way. I got tired of my children crying for food. If it hadn't been for my wife's mother, she had cows, and anyway, I got tired of hearing them cry and have nothing to wear. And I said, I'm going down at that mill and I'm going to start up my job down there. And I got shotgun, and you ought to have seen the picket. Didn't have any fence around the mill. People just sat out there in droves. And they had these green sticks, but when I went down through, marching down through there with my shotgun, they took off. I mean, tell you, they took off. They left that place. Well, that like to.
This is in Hogansville.
Huh?
This is in Hogansville.
This was in Hogansville. Well, they made a case against me, and they took it to federal court.
Now, who made a case against you?
The union did.
Okay.
What year was this?
Huh?
What year was
The local, the local union. It was it later was formed as the AF. What is it?
AFL, yeah.
They call it. They just call it.
Textile work.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So they made a case against you.
Well, they made a case against the company
Against the company, okay.
for what I did.
Okay, now.
And the company, they had to go to the top people in New York had to come down. They had to go to Atlanta's federal court.
Now, you see, do you have any papers on that?
No, I don't have anything on it.
Because we can show you, we don't have it with us, but we have papers about a lot of those cases out of the National Archives.
Yeah,
For example, I was in Greenville yesterday talking with the head of the Spartan Mills, a man is 90 years old,
yeah.
and he was absolutely surprised when I pulled out of my briefcase a document with his signature on it, written in 1934.
Well, 34 is when it was.
But I'm just telling you that
1934.
we may be able to find those documents.
All right, let
Would you
me
be interested in seeing
let
them?
me put a parentheses right in here. Etta Mae didn't talk about this, did
No,
she?
she didn't.
She didn't show you her any pictures of her in the barbed wire fence and at
We
Fort
have those pictures.
Fort
Yes.
McPherson. You
That's-
got them? She
have.
was one of them in there. You know what she called us?
What?
Scabs.
I see.
And she was one of them that carried a green stick.
Yeah, okay,
She
okay.
didn't tell you that, did she?
Yes,
She did?
yeah.
What she said?
She didn't say, she didn't tell us she carried a green stick.
Let me tell you, my uncle, it was superintendent. They had stopped off, I don't know how many mills around this area, except they didn't go down to Alabama. They went to the old mill in Union, Georgia, that my uncle was superintendent of. And he got a tip that they were coming up there and close that mill down that morning. And he called old man Gene Talmadge, was governor of Georgia. He says, I'll have the Georgia National Guard right outside the city limits when they get there, and somebody will be in touch with you. And when they got there and forced that gate open, let me tell you something. You never seen in many army trucks. They told me they got my wife, two of my wife's brothers. They got Etta Mae, and I don't know whether whether Leone was in that thing or not. But I know they got Etta Mae because they quoted her in the paper, in the Constitution, and had a picture on the front page, and she said all them people in Hogan were nothing but scabs. Talking about us, it wouldn't have nothing to do with it. And they took them up to Fort McPherson. They told them, so they said, what y'all gonna do with us? You know what? And they were just loading up everybody that was in that crowd, and some of the R.D. coal manufacturers people, they live right there where this happened. One of the coal ladies come down and see what was going on. They put her on the truck. And they had to take the sheriff of the town to get her off of there. I ain't
Well,
kidding.
now, all of this is very important for us to know. Yeah.
Oh, why? I want to ask you a question.
Okay, because we're telling the story of all the things that were happening in early textiles.
Yeah,
And we've got pictures of this. We can show you the pictures
Yeah.
of Fort McPherson. But we haven't heard it from both sides the way you're telling it, you see.
well, I'm telling you from the ugly side of it, every one of them that got in there deserved it.
You say, okay.
And they stayed in there, I think, about 2 weeks.
Well, you see, this is the important thing we should get. You see, it's very important for us to have both sides here.
Let me tell you what that union did. It broke up families, it broke up churches, it broke up homes, brother against brother, wife against husband. I'm talking about family. You wouldn't think it broke up the Zumwin family. And they wouldn't have nothing to do with us for a long time. But me and my wife, we weren't in that. My wife's brothers was in it, but we weren't in it. Now let me tell you, let me get back a little further. When they come in,
Wait, did you see that series on the Civil War that was on?
no, I
television?
missed that. I wish I'd have seen it.
Okay, well, you know how the Civil War split up
Yeah,
families?
yeah.
Well, we can't tell the story like it was unless we do have both sides.
Yeah,
You see?
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell a very similar kind of thing about this kind of time.
well, let me go back a little bit. My boss told me in the mill, he said, listen, Harry, you going to join the union? I said, I don't know. I don't like the union. He said, well, I think you ought to. My boss told me, the second hand. He said, don't quote me on that, dude. I might get run off. All right. I thought, well, I'll help them organize. I helped them organize that thing. We had a man from Atlanta to come down, And we got organized, and another fellow named Luther Barker, he was on the same kind of job I was on. We wanted to go to Callaway Mills and get Callaway Mills organized. And this guy wanted me and Luther Barker. We seemed to have a little more education and writing. We could write a little better than somebody else, and I guess. He said, well, y'all go down and work for us 3 days. I said, yeah, if we're going to pay, you're going to pay us. Oh, yeah, we're going to pay you. And we went down there, and I don't know it. There's a place in LaGrange called Skeeter Flat. That's where we worked. We signed up people. Oh, they come in there. Let me tell you, it cost $1. We worked 3 days from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. This is before the 8-hour shifts come on. And when we got through, that man paid us $3. $1 a day. I cussed him out and I kicked him in the tail, and I called him everything I could and told him to take it and ram it.
You remember what his name was?
I can't remember. I wish I could tell you.
Do
I
you
wish.
have any names?
One name I know of.
What was it?
Holohan.
Who?
Holohan?
Holohan?
That sounds pretty familiar. I wouldn't be sure, because I'd hate to
Yeah.
use a name that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well,
George Googe. No, George Googe was head of the air valve for the whole state.
But at that point, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. No, he was head of the air valve for the whole
Okay.
state. I doubt if it was George Googe.
we went to the
We
Union.
can ask Joe Jacobs, maybe he knows Holohan.
We went to the Union Hall on a Monday night, I believe it was, and the city let us use the city hall upstairs up there to have union meetings. And I was recording secretary. I said, I want to say something to you people tonight before anybody else says anything to you. And I just got up and took the floor. I said, you see these $3 here? I said, that represents 3 times 12, 36 hours work down at LaGrange, signing up people to this union. I said, that man over there paid us $1 a day. And if that's what union is, I don't want no more of it. To hell with it. I'm going out the door and I don't want no more of it.
What had happened to the dollars that you were collecting from all these people you're signing up?
What happened to him, we turned them over to him.
I see.
We had a
Do
copy
you have
of,
any idea how many you collected?
oh, we must have registered, I'd say safely that I wrote up 300 or 400, and he had to write up that many too. That people were standing in line. You know what, Callaway put them people out of the house. I felt so bad about this thing. He put their furniture outdoors. I felt so bad about that thing. You know, that's been a long time ago. I wouldn't do a thing like that now.
Well, now,
But I decided if that's what labor union pays, I didn't want no part of it, and I ought to beat his eyes out.
well, you learned your lesson.
They said they was gonna get after me. Because one of the friends, my best friends, said there, the union boys are gonna get you and beat you up. I said, tell them to come on. I had me a nice little pistol in my pocket, and I wasn't gonna use my fist. I was gonna kill every son of a gun that come to me.
Now, what?
It didn't matter with me. I was mean as the devil back
Now,
in them
what,
days.
what happened after the union broke up?
Well, I tell you what they did. They decided, the union group down there decided, see, the mill company, we didn't have a strike. Mr. Smith, who was general manager of the textile division, his office in New York, nice man, he come down and talks to the people. He said, now, we're not going to have a strike. We don't want to have any problem in our plant. We're going to close it down. We're going to close down the plants. And he says, we're just not going to have any problem with them. Well, you know, some of the guys needed to go to the office because of things that had to be. We had people that had to pay bills to.
Yeah.
You know what? They took their sticks and broke out the windshields when they tried to drive around there to the office.
Yeah.
well, it was just a sad situation all the way around, but Mr. Smith, they put a fence around, I don't tell you now, they stood up out there on something or other, and they appointed a superintendent of the mill. This is the union boys. People didn't have sense enough to run a textile mill. They were smart boys in what they're doing, but you got to have a little more upstairs to be an executive. You know that. They appointed a superintendent of the mill and all the overseers and all the second hand, all this bunch of hoods out there with these green sticks in their hand. Thank you, sugar. That was pitiful, man. I tell you, it was pitiful. Well, when the union called the strike off, they immediately put a fence around that mill down there.
That's a very useful thing for us.
Yeah, they put a fence around that mill, around Reed Mill, the old mill over there. We didn't have that asbestos plant then. And they put the fence around them mills, and let me tell you something. Let me tell you, you wouldn't believe this. They had the chief of police, and all police officer. Nolan Smith, he was mayor of the town. He didn't want no part of it. But you would be surprised at people that they signed up for a textile union didn't even work down there. I'm talking about people in high places in government in Hogansville, city councilmen, people like that. And they did the same thing in LaGrange.
Why do you suppose those people signed up?
Beg pardon?
Why did you think they signed up?
Well, they thought this was going to be the going thing. They wanted to be on the winning side. If people want to be on the winning side, regardless of the cost, and I'm not one of them kind.
Okay, now, here's again why what you're telling us is so important. People measure the success of a campaign,
Yeah.
the political campaign,
Yeah.
popularity of a television show, whatever it is,
That's right.
by the number of people who sign up, you see.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, they must have been all for it. What you're doing is helping us to interpret why they signed up. This is why it's so important what you're telling us.
Yeah, they felt like they was going to get along with the people of the town and everything go like they wanted.
But this is particularly important to people even who weren't working in the mill. Yeah.
Some of them wouldn't know what a fly frame was from a loom in the mill if they walked in there.
Now, I gather when the Zimmerman, when they got out of the barbed wire pens, came back, what was the attitude of the people in the town?
I need another tape in a minute.
What was the attitude of people in the town towards the people who got put into...
Oh, it was bad. It was bad. Let me tell you, people didn't go to church. If they went to church, they wouldn't speak to one another.
Okay, yeah, okay.
It just ruined the morals and the religion that the people had in the town. And it ruined the town. This little town got a bad name. It got the worst name of any town in the South because of what they called them the Flying Squadrons. I'll never forget the day they got them at Union. Another guy was a good drummer, a little bitty fella. He and I went up the railroad up there. We were going up the railroad. We went fishing. We'd go fishing every morning to us. Up there where I told you I was president of this club. Yeah. Some lakes that they dug clay out of to build brick with way back in the 1840s and 50s. And we go up there and we fished. Well, they come by with 3 big truckloads of them. I didn't know where they were going. And they saw us and they called our name. We're going to beat the you know what out of you when we get back to Hogansville. And I told his name was Tom McRae. I said, I hope every damn one of them gets locked up. Well, you know what? We fished till dark, and we went back up there and come back down the railroad. Didn't even have money to buy a flashlight with. We knew we could walk down the railroad. We come home. My wife met me at the door, and I had a string of fish. She said, don't come in around here, come around at the back, and I'll get you some water. She said, I got something to tell you. She said, you know what happened today? I said, what do you mean what happened? She says, all the flying squadrons up yonder at Fort McPherson behind a barbed wire fence.
So that's how you found out.
Yeah, that's how
Fishing.
my wife told me.
So you
They
were
shook
fishing,
they shook the sticks out, said they're gonna. I told Tom McRae, I hope every damn one of them gets locked up.
That's why he didn't get picked up. He's in fishing. That's right.
And that just tickled me to death, man. I never will forget that. There's so many things happened in 1934. I had, I believe during our time that the mill was stopped, we went over to Tallapoosa River over in Alabama. And when I come home that day, my wife says, I come home 3 or 4 days later. 2 carloads worth of one over there fishing. And I come home 3 or 4 days later, she said, you know what happened today? I said, what? I said, they killed John Dillinger in Chicago. That was in 1934. I didn't know the date. We saw it here on television a while back.
Well, you know, you're just so amazing because I teach a course at New York University about the 30s.
Yeah.
And your memory for dates is so precise.
Listen, before I had this, my children said, Daddy, my wife, I think, was back on. I had as good a memory as anybody. I had to have. On my job down there, I had, I don't know how many customers. I don't know how many styles. I knew what ought to be done out in the mill. They'd call me in, they want so many 1,000 pounds, so many thousands of yards. Well, I had everything, you ain't gonna get nothing but what comes out of the end of the water pipe. Yeah. I don't care if you have 20 million gallons back over yonder. Yeah. When you turn on that faucet, that's what you're gonna get. Well, the faucet is your weave room or your bottleneck in your plant, whatever it is. Maybe it's spinning room or something else. You can only get so much through there. But I had a loom schedule there in front of me, and I'd work on that thing, and I'd stay on the phone with New York and California. I had 2 phones on my desk, and they didn't have button phones. And
could you tell us?
I had memory, man. I had a memory. I had to carry around my.
Could you go back and tell us what a union meeting was like then?
Well, the union meeting was all. What's that pie like, honey? Coconut pie? What? Well, I'm gonna tell him. It was all milk. It was milk and honey.
Yeah, milk and honey. Okay, yeah.
That's what it was to the people. It was. Listen, you're gonna all get good jobs. You're gonna be making 2 or 3 times more money than what them people come down and told all that stuff. I don't have it apart, honey. I'm holding it, keep from.
Okay.
It's okay.
I'm holding.
Okay, and they promised them. Did they start with prayer?
Beg your pardon?
Did they start with a prayer?
Start with a prayer.
Yeah.
Convocation at the beginning of the meeting. Did somebody
No way, no. Didn't start. No prayer. I never did hear a prayer there.
Okay, that's right. Did they have any music?
Didn't have no music, The first meeting we had was up the railroad cut up there about a mile up above the mill. You go Hoganville, across the creek and go up there. Well, a railroad bridge there, and go up there, and we met out, and then the city got where they let us meet in City Hall.
Why did they have them up the railroad cut?
Well, it wasn't nobody let us in the other places, and the city let us in the City Hall.
Okay, so they had them up there until the city said you could go to the City Hall.
Yeah.
Okay, that's important for us. Now, who was running the meetings?
Who was running the meeting?
Yeah.
This man, if I wished I could call his name. I can't call his name.
Houlihan, you think?
Houlihan.
Houlihan. Maybe you ought to go back on that. At that time, whoever was the big man, it was organizing all the textile unions down in this area. It was the same guy. Same guy.
He was out of Atlanta.
Yeah, he was out of Atlanta.
Did the name Joe Jacobs mean anything to you?
No.
He's a lawyer who worked with him, we know. What about Lloyd Gossett?
Who?
Gossett. Lloyd Gossett.
That name sounds a little bit familiar. Now, who was he?
he was a fellow who worked over at Cabbagetown and was a volunteer organizer.
He was?
Yeah.
Well, what did
And
he?
he said he came over in this direction.
Well, that name sounds a little bit familiar.
I have a picture of him.
I wasn't in that thing too long. Listen, I wasn't in it too long.
Okay. Now,
When he paid me them $3, I'd resigned in LaGrange. He didn't know it till I got.
Yeah.
That's when
Okay.
you left. After
Yeah.
$3.
Yeah.
Till the next meeting, he was there.
Now, what did your boss say when they found out that you? Well, they asked you to join up, though.
Well, my boss, my immediate boss, my second, they call him second hand.
Yeah.
He said he thought I let the union down. I said, maybe I did. I said, let's go down here and talk to Mr. Kirkland. Mr. Kirkland was the superintendent of the mill. Mr. Ogletree we had bought a mill up in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and it transferred Mr. Ogletree up there to take over that plant and transferred Mr. Kirkland from Winsboro down here. And Mr. Kirkland was with old Barton all the way, 100%. He told me your family won't go without food, you won't go without coal, you won't go without anything.
How do you spell that, Kirkland?
Kirkland.
Are there any Kirklands left in Hogansville?
Well, I doubt it. There used to be other Kirkland, but they wasn't related to him.
Now, do you have any pictures?
No, I don't have any pictures. They had a lot of pictures of that stuff come out in the paper, and I saved them. And Lord, we had a flood here in 1961. Down in my brother's house, he has one of these 6-room duplexes down below where Etta May lives.
So many people live.
Got up over the windows.
Yeah.
And it got in my house, and some stuff that I had it in a little pasteboard box in a closet, and it ruined it.
But do you have any pictures of yourself as about this time, with the band or anything like that?
You know, I don't know.
With your children, with your family?
Beg your pardon?
Have any family pictures?
Family pictures?
Yeah.
They'd done what?
You were married in 1934.
Oh yeah, I married when my mama took the diaper off of me one day, and I married the next. I married when I was 17 and a half. And my oldest boy is 64 years old.
What day was that?
That was would have been on Christmas Day if the old man hadn't told my wife. It was the next day, 26th day of February, 1926. 26th day of December, 1926.
Did you have a baby born in 1934?
My oldest boy was born November the 30th, 1927.
You're not doing any arithmetic, are you?
No, I'm just wondering, maybe you have family pictures. Any photographs, like any family pictures? He gave them.
I got gobs of them. If you want to stay here and look at them, I'd have to go get them.
When we're done, yeah.
But this, but we really would like to get some pictures of that band. I just wondered.
What did I do with a picture of that band? Did you ever see it, honey?
I think Gordon said that.
Can we knock these things off for a minute?
We can, yeah.
Sure.
Where the Erskine Caldwell.
Oh yes, we've been over at Moreland.
Oh, have you seen it?
Yeah, we've been over there.
Okay, all right.
It's
I was
very
gonna tell you on your way back, you could go
Just fast
through
forward.
there. We could go
I
through.
can't, George. This isn't the remote. This is
Oh,
just for the
okay.
TV.
All right, let's see. I just want to fast.
Found it? Okay, George, I got it.
All right. Oh, you want to see these? Watch what we got here. See all the gourds there?
Yeah, who put all them things up there? Is that the Sharkburg?
Yeah. Keep up the sound.
Well, the best thing I can remember about Sharkburg and Turin, my daddy was hauled, my granddaddy was hauled there from Griffin, Georgia on a train.
Look what we got. See? Isn't
What about that?
that cute?
That is just beautiful. I've got a lot of old lumber on to build me some boxes, but you can't
Look
get
at those
them.
birds.
They won't go in a box. They'll go in these
Yeah.
things. 6 months. I'd leave the office down there and run home and get me a bite. and grab a bus at 20 minutes after 5 out there in front of the mill. And I went to the bus station. It was 10 blocks from there to the A. French Textile School, which I went to. And one of the men, the head man of it, was the one that wrote all my textbooks that I had for International Correspondence School. And they had my record that the mill manager sent it in, and they said you had to be at least a high school graduate, which I wasn't. But I had enough stuff that they had a record of,
proof that you could
that I was equal to a high school graduate in what I took, and they took me. I rode a bus up there, and I rode the bus back. I'd get in home some morning, maybe at 3 o'clock. You know how the buses was. Maybe they'd leave on time, maybe they wouldn't. But I'd be at my desk. I'd be at my desk at 8 o'clock. Rain or shine, but I walked, and there was some fellas from Cabot, from Fulton Bag Mill, found out that I was getting off the bus and walking from there, them 10 blocks from the bus station to the A. French Textile School is the oldest building on that campus. You know, the one with the steeple? And they'd stop and pick me up from then on and bring me back by there. And it sure did take a lot off of me, I tell you. But for 6 months of that, man, it was worth it to me. It was really worth it to me.
Well, you're going to see a lot more of the people you know, I suspect, on here.
She left town till the government stopped them of it. Did you know?
When did the government stop them?
Well, now that plant's been closed down about 5 or 6 years, I guess. And the government stopped them. I'd say it's been 15 years ago.
When did they first start using asbestos there?
Well, you mean when we produced it to ship it as a product of the company? Before the war, we had that stuff scattered out. Some of the cards in the warehouse, fly frames spinning and weaving.
But you were using it even.
And I run the thing. Okay. I run the thing. And this was during the war. And let me tell you something, asbestos was a big item during that war. It was a wonderful item. It's as bad as it's like it is. I mean, the things that happened from it. But they had, the airplanes they built in, they had machines, heating machines, and they had to heat the motors through the asbestos tubing that big. And I don't know how many things that it was for the war effort, man. That was you didn't slow down that asbestos and tire cord for nothing. And we built tire cord down there.
And you stayed in the factory all the time during the
I
war?
was quality control manager.
Judy,
Yeah.
we better go.
Okay.
This has been a wonderful talk.
Well, I hope,
And
I wish I could remember. I can't do it. Since I've had this surgery, I don't know what to tell. I'm 82 years old, I guess is
Look,
something to
remember,
do.
as I say, I know the dates
My,
of
my,
the 30s.
my,
and you are dead accurate.
my dates are really slipping on me though.
You got nothing to worry about.
I wrote, I heard a little nephew, he's a sweet young'un. Johnny is right yonder smiling.
Yeah.
Lives next door, Michael. He just finished 2nd grade, and I just love him to death. God bless him. And anything I tell him, that's Bible.
Yeah.
But you got where he asked, ain't that true? But I told him we was watching ball games, and he plays ball, and he's gonna make a good ball player. I fool with kids all the way up. I gave him my time to helping them. Made a lot of good ball players out of them. I told him, I said, we sat you and watched the big leagues play a lot, and he's talking about the balls, and you know, when they hit a ball and it scars it up and get the color of the grass on it, the umpire throws it out. Yeah. And the ball boys always running up there bringing them balls. He said, how come they throw that ball out and come up there with, I said, anything that would discolor that ball, just a little hair of the hide come up on it like a string. I said, some of these pitchers, you just be surprised, sugar. I said, you're too young to understand, but they can make a lot of doo-doos out of it. And the ump throw it out. He said, well, they give out a ball. And I said, no. I said, let me tell you something. I said, the umps get to the ballpark. They have an umpire's room and nobody else goes in it but them. And they go in there and they take a clay of some kind and they rub up every new ball, get that gloss off of them. And they put them in a bag. And then when they get ready for the ball boy to come in and get the balls, ain't nobody gonna fool with him but that ball boy. And he keeps the umpire supplied, and every one that the umpire don't like, he throws it back to him, and that goes back to the team for practice the next day or whenever. He said, well, how many do they use? I said, well, they could use as many, I guess, as 8, 9, 10 dozen. It all depends on what the balls are hitting and if it's a wet day. And last night they had to call a game in New York. They had the best pitcher in baseball out there with that ball in his hand, water running off of it. And spitball, you know, they throw that thing out a long time ago. Sure. And he didn't believe it. So you know what? Hand me that book right up there, sugar. I got all kind of baseball books. My wife.